Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Now, a fresh cup of tea, check. Badger forged axe, check. Complete unwillingness to admit it's after midnight and I should go to sleep, yep. And on we go. On this assignment, I was to go into the call center of a paper and printing company to try and find out why what should, on paper, have been a successful business wasn't performing. Employee turnover was high, and highest in a call center, and morale was in a crapper. So far, just another task. I rocked up Monday morning, off-the-shelf cotton mix shirt, power-tie trousers that were a little too short, and a general air of defeat of a man whose life has very much not gone to plan. In short, a bad office manager's wet dream. A pre-beaten employee. A chipper little thing took me off for my induction. Do not touch anyone's bottom. No stabbing, management, and you cry on your own time. Seen one, seen them all. And I was dropped off with my trainer to start shadowing them. Now for someone in my line of work, shadow days are some of the most valuable because I'm being told to watch and ask questions, and no one suspects anything, so they just answer anything without thinking. The order system was pretty much idiot-proof. The phone calls scripted by section, cold calls, regular customers, complaints, you get the idea. But there was something soul-sucking about the office. It was weird. Then in comes cuddled Margaret. Obviously not her real name in. Well, I'm bored of Karen. She had a face like she could, at all times, smell something awful. A terrible 80s berm, this was way after the 80s, and despite plain, sturdy office wear, she always wore an exceptionally ugly cardigan over her clothes. Don't get me wrong, not the SME cardigan. She seemed to have an infinite supply of knitwear in eye-gouging combinations of orange, brown, and mustard yellow. Some of you may be thinking that the villain has arrived. As soon as she scurried in, and she did scurry, never really stood up straight, just kind of slouched a little, and never looked right at you. Always had her head at an angle. What little energy there was in a room went. Just gone. Most folk just huddled over their phones, but two middle-aged women scurried over to Margaret, obviously copying her movements, and they all went into an office marked Office Manager. This pretty much set the tone for the time I was in this office. Margaret and her posse would sit in her office and gossip and backstab, while everyone else was expected to carry the full load of the office. Margaret's little friends got the choice shifts, and anyone who so much as looked like showing any spine magically found themselves working splits, nights and weekends. At first I was baffled. How can she possibly be getting away with this? Well, it was three things. She wrote performance evaluations for all of her staff, and because she'd been in the office since it opened, HR just rubber-stamped any terminations she sent down. She'd managed to create supervisor but not a supervisor roles for her friends, so she could justify them always getting the plum shifts or any time off they wanted because they were needed. She wrote the schedule and she approved the holiday, and no one dared cross her if she ever wanted to see their kids again. She had a pretty sweet little setup. Shame that she wasn't as clever as she thought she was. I was getting paper for the printers in the morning when I saw one of the girls signing for a small delivery the UPS driver brought up to our floor and just shoved the boxes into a corner. Staple the manifesto on top and wander off. Once she was out of sight, I went over for a quick shufty. I never signed for anything at work till I've checked it. Screw me. This manifesto was huge. Easily 3 times as large as could possibly fit in the boxes. Margaret didn't work weekends. I did. This was Thursday, so I had to work fast. I called my boss and he had one of our team flown to where the office supplies were coming from, where he was meeting a forensic accountant and some officers of the law. A second forensic accountant met me Friday night after Margaret had gone home. The setup was actually kinda brilliant. Margaret had befriended a lady who worked in shipping at the second company. She would place an order and then call her friend and fax her through a cancellation. Her friend would invoice the correct first amount, then refund the difference to Margaret's account. Send the smaller order, but with a larger invoice, and because Margaret was a micromanaging twat and didn't do it every shipment, she'd been getting away with it for years. Monday morning swings around. Margaret scurries in and the secretary tells her that the boss wants to see her before she starts for the day to discuss promotions and raises in her department. Margaret walks into the boss's big office, sits, and I walk into a big office and I'm back in my armor. Tailored Henry Poole suit, tailored shirt, silk tie. I looks good. To be honest though, I don't think she even noticed. She was kinda distracted by the police officers who followed me into the room. The officers laid it all out very carefully for the boss. The accountant gave a very summarized version of what he had. Margaret was fired, cuffed and let out of the building past all of the people she used to bully and abuse. Each order wasn't huge, though anyone who orders stationery for a business knows it ain't chicken feed. But it had gone on for long enough that the charges meant that she wasn't going up in front of a judge tomorrow morning. It took me quite a lot longer than usual to get that company retrained and on track. It's harder the older a business gets, as people get so used to doing stuff the old way that they can't even imagine a better way. Still, by the time I left, a new office manager had been brought in. The shifts were fixed, HR was down a dinosaur and up a new recruit, and Margaret was still in jail. It had been months and they hadn't even gotten to her trial yet. This took place a couple months ago. I went to Wally World, Walmart, for an hour with my friends. Our Walmart was only a 2-minute walk. After about 30 minutes, I parted from my friends and went looking around. Keep in mind, I'm also listening to music. I ended up stumbling to the car parts section, then went to pass through the toy section. I saw that my Walmart started selling Bendy plushie, and I wanted to get one for myself, kinda a Bendy fan a bit. I ended up dropping some plushies on the ground, so I had to pick them up. I go back and stand there for a good couple of minutes looking at the Bendy plushes and figures they sold. Listening to, I think, Ali Storm at the time, when at that moment, it happened. I get an almost sharp poke in the shoulder, and there is the behemoth. Let's call her the entitled mother. Stereotypical Karen, hair, get up, purse, the whole mile and yonder. Just had a harsher bio-Texan slang. I only stared for about a couple of seconds, saw her near irritated face, then back at looking at the Bendy stuff. The entitled mother then proceeds to yank ever-loving heck out of my earbuds. They crash to the ground. I look up and this is the conversation that went on. "What is your problem, lady?" I ask her. "Excuse me, is that the language you use at people? And why are you listening to music and not helping your customers?" "What do you mean?" "Why are you not doing your job? I need your manager now." "Ma'am, I don't work here." "Yes, you are. Don't you dare lie to me," she says, pointing her crusty hands at me. "Either you help me because my kids and husband are waiting for me, or I get your manager and have you fired." For the second time, "I don't work here." At this point, I said to myself, screw this. I'm a skedaddle. I unplug my earbuds, turn around, and walk away to find my friends. The entitled mother starts to yell at me, and a few seconds later, I feel a firm grip on my arm and a violent pull. This witch is now dragging me away. "Ow, let me go. I am taking you to your manager." After we went down the toy aisle, I threw myself forward and managed to make this woman lose balance and almost fall to her butt. But she doesn't. She then turns around and proceeds to scream at me. "How dare you! You nearly made me fall. And that's assault." "Don't you ever touch me, you selfish weirdo. Leave me alone." I yell at her. She lounges at me to grab me again when all of a sudden, one of the employees jumps in. Stop! What is going on here? Before I get a word out, this employee had refused to help me and had assaulted me. I want him fired now. The employee looks at me, then at the entitled mother and says, "Ma'am, he doesn't work here." He's right, I was legit wearing a Metallica shirt and dark blue jeans and boots. Good indicators for people out of work there. Yes, he is. I saw him stuck in the toys. Are you blind or plain stupid? I ask her. And now he's being rude. Fire him now. The employee in radio, I need a manager and police here. The Karen heard what he said, then started to smirk at me. The manager shows up first and he takes me and tells the entitled mother to stand with the employee. And he starts to question me. What has happened? I answer, this woman had come to me and snatched my earbuds out of my ears. Then she started to demand me to help her because she thought I worked there. And when I walked away, she grabbed my arm and jerked it. I lift my short sleeve to show the marks when her nails dig in the skin. I jerked away and she lost her balance and almost fell. I see. I'll look into this. One county deputy steps in after about 5 minutes and starts taking statements. I gave him mine after the entitled mother. He tells me that she accused me of being hostile and that I had assaulted her and she wants to file charges on the evil employee. I showed the officer my arm and the officer looked at me with more of a crossed eye than a deer in headlights. The deputy says, that is interesting. I will look at the CCTV and we will conclude the situation. The manager and officer went off to look at the camera video and came back after 10 minutes. The entitled mother looks nervous now. She says, are we almost done here? I need to go. The deputy says in condescending tone, "Where are you going? You are under arrest for assault." Karen starts to flip her crap, yelling and screaming. She started to resist the officer and he called a backup. It took 2 officers and the manager to calm her enough to put handcuffs on her wrist. Afterwards, one deputy came to me. "Do you want to press charges?" I told him yes. Serves her right, to be honest. I ended up going on the county booking site. My county allows you to see county jail inmates, and I saw her mugshot and charges. She got assault on a peace officer, and resisting arrest. Maybe this would have never happened if she pulled her head out of sand. I kept this quiet for a bit until my friend introduced me to this website. Hope y'all liked it. I'll keep the details as vague as possible because, well, I'm still with this organization. I work for a government department. We have offices and locations all over the state. I'm based out of a city that's about a 2-and-a-bit-hour train ride to our head office. At the time, I was working in a team that had members working remotely all across the state, looking after policy, process, and quality assurance. Our old manager had gone and gotten himself promoted for being genuinely brilliant at his role. So our new manager, Steve, was hired in from the glorious world of banking. And he was here to whip us lazy public servants into shape. A few days after he began his role, he called us all to a teleconference to inform us that he wanted all of us to be at the head office at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for an all-day in-person team meeting. He wanted to see us in meet space, to size us up, understand what we were doing, and see where we weren't keeping up with the private sector. As I mentioned, due to the nature of the work we were doing, we were all across the state. So in-person whole team meetings were rare, and if they occurred at all, they were booked weeks in advance. We were all adept at video conferencing, long before COVID. Some of us tried to tell our new high-flyer manager that almost none of us were in the same city as him, and to be there on such short notice would mean travel expenses, meal allowances, overtime, and so on. He didn't seem to care, and told us in no uncertain terms to just be at the head office tomorrow at 8 a.m. before abruptly hanging up. Now I should explain something. I'm one of a handful of union delegates in our department. I know our award back to front, specifically the sections dealing with travel, allowances, and overtime. So I engaged in malicious compliance mode. If Steve wanted us there, Fine, but it will cost him. So I quickly went about emailing my team what Steve had done by requiring us to be in the head office at 8 a.m. and what to do. Because we'd have to travel outside our normal work hours, our workday clock started ticking the moment we left our homes and only stopped once we got home. Some of our team traveled overnight. They were entitled to overtime to travel, a dinner allowance and accommodation for the night, and the same returning. As someone traveling in the morning before 7 a.m., I was entitled to a breakfast allowance, lunch allowance, and if I got home after 9 p.m., a dinner allowance also. So I left my house at 5 a.m. to catch the only train that would get me there in time. The train that was running slightly behind, but I made it in time. So my first 3 hours of my workday are down and I've done no work. After a brief period of us introducing ourselves to Steve, he proceeded to spend the next 4 hours telling us about all the things he did at the bank, how he made so much money for them, where they had sent him as a holiday bonus, how we're all stuck in the past in the public service, the work he'd seen wasn't up to private sector standards and so on. He had all the rudeness of a finance pro who had always failed upwards because others had picked up his slack. By 3 p.m. my entire team was into overtime pay territory, as Steve was just warming up with his non-charm offensive. Another 3 hours go by with Steve verbally patting himself on the back, deeply in love hearing his own voice, but all I can hear is ka-ching, ka-ching. Steve decided that 5 p.m. was a good time to finish up. He stopped mid-sentence, looked at his watch, and unceremoniously said, "That's all for today, go home now," and walked out. After I and a few others gave a few awkward shrugs to each other, we all packed up and started to make our separate ways home after doing no work all day. I myself got to the train station pretty quickly and saw a train was leaving soon that would get me home around 8 p.m. Or I could catch the old station's train and get home closer to 9:30 p.m. You know what? No matter how fast I could run, I just couldn't catch that earlier train. I guess now I just have to catch all the station trains and be on the clock for another hour and a half, plus have my dinner paid for. Such rotten luck. I submitted my claims the next day, 4.5 hours at double rate. My train tickets, my taxi fares to and from the train station, my breakfast, lunch and dinner allowances. For me alone, it was close to a $500 expense claim. The rest of my team followed suit and ensured they claimed everything too. Steve tried to fight us on approval for the claims but quickly learned that, unlike in the world of banking, most public servants are union and we'd raise living hell if he denied our award guaranteed allowances. His all-day Steve Fest symposium blew a good $6,000 hole in his budget. Needless to say, while Steve was our manager, he never required us to attend an in-person meeting again. Video conferencing was just fine. He only lasted 6 months before leaving for new opportunities. He just went back to his old job at the bank, because he was the one who couldn't keep up.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.